I'll show it.
So I'm here with my friend Neeta today, and I'm so happy to interview you today, Neeta, on about midlife conversations, because there's so many things that are happening in our brain in midlife, as you know. And I'll tell you, the big thing that comes up, especially with midlife women, especially, is the circumstances. There's so many things hitting us between what's going on in our bodies and the hormone shifts and appearance changing. And now we're going through like midlife crisis stuff. Maybe marriages are changing, careers changing, kids are leaving home. So much is happening that it's so easy to get sucked back into the circumstance. And you are sort of that queen of grit. Like, you know how to navigate through circumstances. So I can't wait to dive in and chat with you today. Thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh, love. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So I want to talk, there's so many things I want to ask you, but I want to start from the beginning. And by the way, Neeta just published a book. I just got it right before we started recording, so I have not even read it yet, but I can't wait. I love the title. It's called That Sucked, Now What? I mean, what an awesome title. That sucked, now what?
Well, I had to fight for that title for like 8 months because
Really?
my publisher was like, no, that's not you. I'm like, of course it's me.
No,
it's me in my own skin. Yeah.
It makes me want to I need to read it tonight. I have to understand what's going on. But we're going to get into the book, but I want to start with you. Talk to us about, because you didn't have like a normal upbringing. You had a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah. I definitely grew up super fast. I had to, I was a product of immigrant parents. My dad was from India. My mom was from the Philippines. So, no pressure, the energy to perform and do and achieve and just all of the things that was just that was my world. But then it took a different toll. When I was 10, my mom got sick and she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And, for my strict Indian Punjabi father, that was he couldn't understand. And I was the oldest of 2 younger brothers as well. And so that really took us on a journey with my mom. I mean, between the ages of 10 and 16, I literally grew up in hospital settings.
I can't even imagine. I mean, I think of my daughter 15 and they're in teenage world, to have that kind of fear happening and that responsibility.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember after school, all my friends were going to the mall, and going to the mall was a thing. It wasn't TikTok, right? And then for me, I was going to the hospital bedside, doing my homework with my mom. So that was it was just tough. It was just what it was. You don't know any different, right? You're like, oh, I wish I can go with you, but I can't.
Sure.
And so that was our life. And my mom, she lost her battle. It ended up spreading to her lungs and her brain. So that would not only set me up for a trajectory of thinking that health is going to be my very prime, value later on, but then also just this idea that, okay, I'm strong. I'm resilient. I'm strong. I was told that. My friends and family, my teachers told me that, you're strong, Neeta, you're the oldest, you got this. And so that was the mantra in my head. So then a year later, when my brother was coming out of school, I was a senior in high school and he was a sophomore. He had an asthma attack. And it was our homecoming year. And it was literally it was a year after my mom died. And we were supposed to meet because our high schools were literally kitty corner from each other. He went to an all boys high school and I went to, we grew up in Chicago. So it was in the city of Chicago. And he never made it to meet me because he had a severe asthma attack.
Wow. Which is completely uncommon for that to happen. And
no, he wasn't an athlete. I mean, he played chess. It was common more in athletes, right? If you were playing football and things like that, but he wasn't. It was, years later, I've now been able to make peace with it. And he was the closest to my mom, honestly.
Yeah.
And to think that now I'm like, okay, well, maybe they just wanted to be together. But back then it took our family out. I mean, crushed, wrenching, gut pain.
Yeah, I can imagine. You can only take so much trauma, and then to have 2 massive significant things like that a year apart.
Oh, it was a sucker punch. I mean, it probably wasn't until quite a few years ago where I could actually speak about it without fully shaking still, because the trauma has run so deep. And so that took my dad went into deep, severe depression. I had to get 3 working jobs just to support the family. I couldn't go away to colleges.
So you're 17 at this when this is happening.
I'm 17 at this point. I'm a senior, you're applying to colleges, and my dad is just like, okay, let's focus. So let's not grieve. Let's channel your grieving into just study and get into college. Like that was still the mantra, immigrant parents. And I think he was just doing the best he could, but this trauma was so big. And then 2 years later, my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Oh, wow. And you're like, really? Cause is this just, what is happening?
Yeah. Natalie, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I don't know if I can understand, but like, I was screaming at the doctors. I mean, I lost my shit. I just,
like how much can one family take?
Oh yeah. Those days were so dark and so awful. And I think that I got into my 20s thinking, all right, like I lost my dad when I was 19, and I was then, we were orphans. I was
so you're basically the oldest. So you're parenting your other. Yeah.
I'm parenting my youngest brother. And by the way, my middle brother, died on my youngest brother's birthday.
Oh
and
my gosh.
So it was a lot of trauma. And so I was kind of an expert at trauma Olympics for a little while. I did not want to get that title.
So did somebody step up to help you? Were you having, what happened?
Yeah. So, Filipino Indian culture, everyone comes in, and that was such, I don't think I'd be here today if we were just by ourselves. I had so many of my aunts, my matriarchs on my mom's side, my grandmother, my great aunt, they basically stepped in to help raise us. They still lived in their homes, but, everyone kind of took, space and time. And my aunt on my dad's side, my dad's sister, was a primary caregiver for us, for my brother and I. It still isn't the same, right? Because many of my aunts didn't have children. My grandmother, they all did the best, right? It was very much tiger parenting. So very strict, very like, all right, straight A's, good grades. Like no one could hold space for the bigness of our emotions. Everyone was just perform, achieve, and success, because that's all they knew. And that's probably what they all grew up with. And so for me, it was just, so I ended up going to dental school, and I ended up going to dental school. And one of the first jobs I actually had while my mom was sick was working for a dentist on Saturday mornings. And I was answering the phone, and that was my first foray into dentistry. But, fast forward 10 years later, I'm in dental school, and I graduated, all of the things, fell in love, and I get into my first marriage. And it was probably the greatest and most painful experience, because that was the first time I would really learn about self-love. And because, mind you, I did not deal with a lot of my losses. I went to quote unquote therapy, but as a kid, you're just going because people are afraid that you're probably going to hurt yourself. And so they're checking the boxes, but it wasn't
wearing mask. It's just masking. Yeah. So
it was like, okay, they're good. They're going, but you don't really unpack a lot of that depth of like the full wailing and the screaming and the, full emotional release. I didn't do that until December 31st, now 11 years ago, where I found myself, just like in my master bedroom, 5-story home. I thought I'd made it. My family was proud of me that I had purchased my practice. I was a cosmetic dentist. I had people working for me. I looked probably like I was 18. And so I did all of these things.
You still look 18, by the way.
Thanks, love. And so
she does. If you can see her on video, you'll be like, why is she on Midlife Conversation? She is midlife. I will say that, but she doesn't look it.
I just turned 40 this year. Yeah. And so, but it wasn't until then where I actually hit rock bottom, where I was spiritually dead, emotionally scared for my life. And my ex-husband threatened my life at that point. And it was for me to really like get out of this chaos that I was actually in for years. But I was so scared. I was scared to be alone.
Wait, back up a minute here. So you said he threatened your life. So were you in a rough, rocky marriage, and you just doing what you always did? Like, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm going to ignore it. Is that what happened?
Oh yeah. My coping mechanism was I chose emotionally unavailable men and I overlapped it.
Mm,
So I overlapped it. That was the one thing that I succeeded in outward,
sure.
success but with boys, oh no, that I didn't have a playbook for it. I didn't know. I just wanted to create a family that I had
Yeah.
lost. And so for me, it was I didn't know what the love bombing was. That
So
certain
you liked the narcissistic guy.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that was me. I was like, all right, give
Yep.
it to me because I was so codependent in my behaviors. If you can imagine
Totally.
going through all of those losses, you're like afraid everyone around you is going to die. So
Yeah.
you're like, let
And
me hold.
if you think of narcissism, it's like and I'm so familiar with that type of dynamic, but
Yeah.
that narcissistic personality, they've got the two sides of things. One, they truly are emotionally unavailable. Like they're not, there's that, but then there's this other part where there's the acting, the performing, the show, and so it feels attractive. It feels safe. And especially if you're masking, it's like, oh, this is perfect because we're keeping this front to the world.
Oh, it's so good. It's like because the codependent side is also trying to, it's like fitting in a puzzle. It's
Sure.
a puzzle piece. And so I was the perfect person for the narcissist.
Mhm.
And also it was great to keep my confidence super low. So I
Mhm.
felt like I couldn't ever leave. I was, in my mind, I was like, I'm broken. And so there was a lot of things that I had to confront in myself when things got so bad. So for anyone's listening who maybe is going through a rough time or a rough patch, or maybe has been enduring something like this for decades, because I know that many times we don't necessarily talk about it. It was because of a girlfriend of mine who called me out subtly, who didn't say, "Oh, I don't like him." I don't, because they did a great job of isolating me around my closest family and even my friends.
Yeah.
And so, did my family like him? No, no. The signs were all there. Red flags were all
Mm-mm.
there. And for when you're in that sort of chaotic relationship, because I grew up with chaos, something was going wrong every single year. It was just, my nervous system did not know how to regulate at all. I knew how to
Sure.
regulate chaos because I'm like, okay, I could live in the chaos. And so this was something that I needed to step out and recognize for myself. So December 31st, I was with a girlfriend and she's
Wow.
like, Neeta, she's like, you're not even 30 yet. And you have all of these things. She's like, I see you in a different light. I can see you don't have
Mm.
to do this like my parents who are in their 50s, who my mom is still walking on eggshells. And so that landed for me because she was the
Mm.
catalyst for me to then recognize, what am I doing? How did I get here? And okay, so
Yeah.
literally haphazardly packed my stuff.
You did
She
not have, I'm
supported
assuming you
me.
did not have kids yet, or you did have
I
kids
did not
before?
have
Okay.
kids.
Okay.
No, no, it was two people that just knew. My
Yep.
brother, thankful for him, and then my friend. And friends have been the through line from my life, every single
Mm,
loss, my through line. So community is so big. And obviously,
for
I
sure.
met you at a community event, and being able to go deep with people is such a big like
Yeah.
value for me because I didn't have family. And
Mm.
so then fast forward, I get into my 30s and it is all about healing on every level. Like I'm like, give me some of the EMDR, the psychedelics,
Hmm.
let's move through these, emotional release workshops. Let
I'm
me be
sure you were
comfortable with the
searching for
rage.
so many answers, and it's like, and you didn't even know that was available before.
Oh, had no idea. I mean, I started even leading a small group, the Christian community like welcomed me with open arms because I'm just like, I am hungry. I need to
Mm-hmm.
rebuild my life, a community. And so I, never judge the people that like walk into your life
For
because
sure.
sometimes they're angels and they might serve you in certain ways. For me, I just wanted to be accepted and loved, and even in my family, a lot of the folks who weren't really okay with me getting a divorce, like my Filipino family, they're like, why would
Mm-hmm.
you do that? But because so many of them have affairs and these secrets. And so there was so much shame around even telling people that I was in an abusive relationship. I couldn't
Yeah.
even say those words out of my mouth until I started to, just say yes to all of these new
Wow.
experiences. So I spent time with a lot of shamans. It took me around the world. It took me to different places. And then I started recognizing that I didn't really like being a cosmetic dentist. Like I was good at making people look good and feel good.
Which
But what
fits
I
right in what you were doing with the masking. If you think about it, like
so true.
yeah, like let's just look the part. Let's just look better.
Oh yeah, let's just look better. Let's just hide everything. You're
Yeah.
telling me about your crazy relationship right now because dentists
Right.
they're kind of like therapists in many ways. And I'm just gonna make your smile even
Yeah.
better so we can
Yeah.
mask that.
It makes sense.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So I can see how that lost like its purpose. It lost its because now you're like seeing, I want real, I want authentic. I'm just contributing to this right now. That makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the more I started to recognize and go back to my truth and get back to,
Mhm.
even things that lit me up, I never even knew, okay, what does happiness even mean to me? Because for me, I was taught happiness meant,
Sure.
all right, you're serving other people, you're making your aunts happy, your grandmother happy, but nobody was like, hey, what about you?
And it's also
Until
super culturally ingrained too. I mean, even though your mom and dad passed on, that's it's super strong in both their
oh,
cultures.
totally, totally.
That's
It's
what you
like
knew.
That's
Yeah.
all I knew. That's like, wait, what do you mean boundaries? That's not a thing.
Yeah.
What does that even
It
mean?
sounded too American to,
It
to
was
like
too
have a
American.
purpose and have boundaries. Right.
Yes. And to be honest, yeah, it was a privileged thing for me to even go into, right? Because
Sure.
of what they went through
Mhm.
and the chaos that we were in. So this was like chapter 2 or even, stage 2 or act 2 for me. And
Mm.
then, getting into the healing work, which was I had to break down. I had to break down in all the ways and unlearn. So yeah, I started a nonprofit for women and girls to teach self-confidence. And then I got into investing in women. And because I had, a
Yeah.
dental business that I was like, okay, how am I going to get out of this? And I just started saying yes to new
Mhm.
opportunities, saying yes to doing stand-up comedy, saying yes to improv. And that not only rebuilt my confidence, there's a concept I talk about in the book known as your bounce factor. And so our bounce factor is comprised of 4 parts, right? And it's part 2 of the book, but most people think resiliency is that toughness because I was like that too. But when we actually know resiliere in Latin means to bounce. And if we take a
Mm.
glass and we drop it, it's going to shatter in a million pieces, right? It's going to break down. But if we take a ball, like I have 2 babies, I have 2 kids, one's 4 and the other one's 18 months. When I give them a ball that's flexible, like a basketball or a tiny little ball, it has a little bit of give, right? It has a little bit of that agility where it's going to be soft as well as
Yeah.
tough so that it can bounce and sometimes bounce higher and higher. And so the 4 parts really are the first one is let's make peace with our upbringing.
Mhm.
So that's something that I had to do, make peace with that. You can't change it. And for most
Let me
people,
ask you, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I have a question here that's coming up for me.
yeah.
And so how did you when you recognize that you had been emotionally unavailable, you hadn't actually walked through the pain, you had been attracting that into your life, all of that. How did you find that you were able to finally open up and walk through it? Because I think that's a really challenging spot for people. Like I think people that are emotionally unavailable or closed or have the wall up or whatever, they do. They've been told it,
Mhm.
they know, but it's so scary to break it down. They almost don't know how to. So I don't want to skip over that part because
Yeah.
I'm sure there was how did you figure out how to do that?
I mean, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I couldn't hold it in. I mean, I was so unhappy. I literally hit my breaking point. And that
Mm,
breaking point was December 31st. It was like, I can't hold this in
okay.
anymore because for so much of my life, and I know that this might resonate even with you, Natalie, like I I wasn't there was no space for me to cry because I
Mm,
had to be strong. There was no space for me to break down and let it all out because oh my gosh, how are we supposed to support her?
sure.
And so it wasn't until I couldn't no longer hold it in anymore. Like
So you just burst it. It's like it
I
wasn't even like you made a decision. It burst.
fully burst, fully
And
fully
you're
burst, and
almost
I
lucky
couldn't
it
even.
bursted that way versus in a health challenge. Cause I think a lot of times that's how it shows up.
Well, funny enough, you're talking about health challenges. For me, I didn't even realize until having been on the other side of that, when I actually found love, when I actually had, became a mother, that all in my 20s, I suffered from severe like anxiety to the point of like, I had such crazy digestive issues, like
Mm,
like I couldn't eat sushi. I was on all of these different things. I had
mm.
Pepto-Bismol on the side of my bed.
Yeah.
Sexy, right? For years, because I just had such like gripping pain every time I would eat something that would just trigger it and couldn't figure it out. And especially during the time of my divorce. And so
Makes
you're
sense.
absolutely right. It manifested in so many ways. Our vagus nerve goes from, our brain all the
Yeah.
way through our body. And so, in the book, I actually talk about ways where we can open our vagus nerve and like basically
It's incredible.
just manage our nervous system that way with different tools so that we can actually catch ourselves. But back then I had no idea. I was just like, all right, this is what's going on. I'm bare. I'm bare to the world. I'm naked. I'm exposed
Sure.
because I was living this lie and I couldn't lie anymore.
So
And
do
then,
you, for the person that is stuck and they maybe are not at that breaking point yet, but they're headed there, they
yeah.
know, any of the things, the modalities that you chose, do you think they were the thing? Like you mentioned, you kind of found Christianity at one point, and then you said you went and worked with shamans and psychedelics and you did some EMDR. It's like all very different things in a search. Was there like one thing or a combination that you thought like, hey, this really opened me up?
Oh gosh, yeah. So when I'm talking about the bounce factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as I talk about the bounce factor now, the first part I already talked about was your upbringing, but the second part, which we can build to increase our bounce factor for anybody that's stuck, to get out of the stuck, to get out of the suck, because many times we are stuck in the suck
Yes.
and we can't get out. And I know that it comes around a lot of times, either in the beginning of the year or even the end of the year, and or after really sucky human moments, but it's inevitable, right? And so for me, the very first few years was all about cultivating what I call good stress. That's the second part in building your bounce factor.
Okay.
And what I mean by good stress, because you're like, wait, well, how do I build good stress? Why do I even want stress when I'm already stressed? So
Sure.
hear me out. Like the good stress, what I'm talking about is most people will cocoon. Most people will shut down because we want to avoid, we want to distract, and we want to numb. That's what
Mhm.
I did. I mean, luckily I didn't have, addictive behaviors, but my addiction was trying to control everything. I was a
Yeah.
perfectionist. Hello, I'm a cosmetic dentist. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't make a mistake. That was what I was. So I was so keen on trying to control my team members, the way that I did my work on a day-to-day basis. And finally you have this breaking point where it fully cracks you
Yeah.
open. You can't hide from the world anymore. It's not going to be perfect. I remember coming into my office. I was a dentist, parking my car with all of my, like, whatever I could grab from my house in the first few weeks. After I did a restraining order and you have to go before a judge. I mean, it was all of these things that literally took me out of like hiding anymore because I had to present
Sure.
myself. And then I come into my office trying to pretend like, okay, everything is good. And I remember I had, the suction in my patient's mouth, and I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to tell everybody because I'm sobbing with my mask to hear my
Mm.
goggles and my, like, my mask is getting all like foggy. My goggles are getting foggy because I'm literally like dry heaving, like
Yeah.
crying. And I'm like, I got up. I'm like, excuse me. The guy is like sitting there. It could be a comedy set, but I went out. I'm like, I need to talk to everybody right now. I had 4 ops going. We had
Wow.
patients everywhere, people in the waiting room. And I'm like, I can't. And I just blurted it out. I'm like, this is going to be so awkward right now, but I'm going through, this really
Mhm.
painful time. And I just said it. And I said, you can leave or you can stay. And if you're afraid of uncertainty, I don't know what's going to happen, all of these things. And that was the moment that true vulnerability, which I talk about in the book as well, is, that suck can sometimes, grab us into this victimhood. But what I'm talking about is the moment between that sucked and now what, there's this bridge of vulnerability where you're actually saying, I need help. I can't do this alone. Can you support me? And everyone just took their masks off and like literally we hugged each other. And it was so powerful because I thought I had to do this thing on my own. And
You
so that
surrendered. It was a total surrender moment too.
full surrender. So that's what I talk about is like, if you can cultivate this idea of good stress, so leaning into the discomfort that we choose to avoid, me invoking good stress was leaning into that discomfort that I wanted to hide away from everyone and not tell everybody the truth, think I could just mask it, and then say yes to all of these other opportunities. Hey, you want to do this retreat with me? Yes, I'm there. Hey, you want to go to this improv thing with me? Yep, I'm there. You want to do the psychedelic thing? Yes. So saying yes to these opportunities that will expand you and take you out of your edge. Yeah, you want to do a triathlon? Never done it before, not that good at swimming? Yes. Like, so that was slowly and steadily rebuilding me in so many ways. And literally I have a whole slew of it in the book to talk about how to tap into good stress, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual.
Yeah, you just tapped on two words that I absolutely love. And they were my word this year coming up is vision. But the year before that, it was expansion. And before that was surrender. But I hear a lot of like surrender and expansion. And what you're sharing is that whole, and I fully align with that and believe that we have to surrender to what actually is and actually feel it. And then expansion is such an overlooked part where we have to really open up and try new things, do new things, talk to new people. And that's exactly what you did, saying yes to all the things, because we stay in our box of this is what I've always been told. This is all I know. There is no expansion in that. And we do stay stuck.
We can't grow. We can't grow when we're stuck in the suck.
And that's where I personally will, I'll come up against and not intentionally, but people that are super judgmental and rigid in their box, because there's so many different ways and modalities and just answers. And I feel like that's such a restrictive place to be when you're like, I have to be right. It's only this. And I judge everybody else, versus being expansive and learning all the different ways.
Well, and look, listen, not everything is for everybody, right? When people ask me, hey, is psychedelics the way? And I'm like, honestly, do your research. It may not be for everybody. It's actually not for everybody. However, for me, it was the most cathartic experience. And also even reconnecting and connecting with different kinds of friends who maybe will serve you in different seasons of your life. Maybe they're not your forever friends, but maybe for that season that you're going through that thing. Like I said, I was in that small group. I started leading that small group. And then I realized, oh, wait, actually, maybe
going down the religion road.
Yeah. And maybe I'm like, oh, maybe I'm meant to speak to bigger audiences. That's what came from it. And then it was, doing a pitch training with VCs where I didn't even have a startup. It was a nonprofit, but it got me into this world of VCs, which then landed me in San Francisco, where I was then mentoring founders from a cosmetic dentist, So it's like following the breadcrumbs. You just never know where it would lead, but you've got to say yes to the adventure.
Sure. I love that. So take us to where you are now. Like what transpired, what happened after you sort of walked through these things and you figured this out?
Yes. Well, for a while, my heart was obviously closed, but for those listening who are definitely, in this season of transition and divorce, there is hope. And I know that, for me, when I started saying yes to dating, it was painful. It was scary. And I also had to reconnect back to myself. Okay, if I want to, and this is part 3 of the bounce factor, by the way, if I want to have somebody that is honest, then I've got to be honest with myself. And so that began this journey of, okay, if I want somebody that's vulnerable, where am I not being vulnerable in these dates? Because I would be judging and I'd be like, no, like going on 50 first dates, literally. Like I had a whole spreadsheet and I started quantifying it. I mean, it was like, it was a whole thing. But for me, it was like, okay, she's not ready. I'm not ready. And so when I talk about in the book is our emotional capacity to feel and to honor, like, oh, okay, am I getting jealous here? Okay, what is happening where I am seeing a lack in myself, and how is that projecting out? So it's allowing some of those big feelings to still surface of, all right, is that part of you that needs a little bit more compassion that you're not paying attention to? And so lo and behold, I met my now husband 3 different points in 3 different countries in the world. First, we met at Dominican Republic.
Okay.
And then 2 years later, we met in Malaysia. And then a year after that, we met again in Malaysia and then in India.
It just kept bumping into you.
We just kept, it was like boom, 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 boom. And I was like, okay, I think he's my person, but I'm just going to say yes to the adventure and not judging the outcome. Because at this point, I knew I was ready for my second act in whatever that looked like. And I wasn't going to attach myself to marriage again because I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And so luckily he was also in the same space. He was married before. And we came into our union being so intentional about what we wanted, how we wanted to create our lives. And our first year and a half, we were just bouncing around different parts of the world. He was on his way from Malaysia to San Diego, and I was on my way to Singapore because I was doing a lot of, leadership coaching at the time with leaders. And so it was a very mixed bag of things, but then we fell in love and we said yes. And 5 years later, we have 2 beautiful babies. So here we are.
Amazing.
Literally in the magic and the mess, because, as my subtitle, find the joy in chaos. That's really the joy in chaos when you have 2, toddlers, 18 months and 4 years old.
Wow. I just love this journey. And I really, gosh, you really truly do embody that journey of turning that mess into, or chaos into joy, and just really navigating the circumstances. Because I really believe so many people are so stuck in circumstance, they don't see another possibility. And I think it's critical to surround yourself with people that live in possibility. And if you don't have those really in your life, that's why it's so important to tune into podcasts like this, or to read your book, and to just make your own surround sound of this information so you can level up your life.
I mean, honestly, Natalie, that's what I did in the darkest days. I literally used to listen to Simon Sinek on repeat back in the day, and Mel Robbins back in the day, Brene Brown, and I started to infuse it craziness into my dental office before it was even a thing. And everyone would make fun of me. No,
but you get it in your subconscious. It's so important if we don't have those people in your life. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's where it starts, and then maybe it's saying yes to a retreat or an event or something like that to find more like-minded people.
Yes. Well, so good. This is so fabulous today. So everyone go out and get that book. That Sucked Now What? Where can they get it? Anywhere books are sold, Amazon,
Yes.
Where do you want them to go?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So you can actually get, we've got incredible bonuses too. So if you go to thatsuckednowwhat.com, you actually get a digital version of this 44-page self-healing guide. It's the workbook that goes with the book. It goes with all of the concepts that we kind of, touched on.
Say that link again.
Today.
So I make sure we're going to put it in the show notes too, but what is the link?
Thatsuckednowwhat.com.
Great. Thank you so much, Neeta.
You are so welcome. Thanks so much, Natalie. It was such a pleasure to serve you all.